All right, hey gang, welcome to the rules clarification and reminders video for Solo Champions League round 702, which is Rocket versus Brotherhood of Badoon, which is Drang. So in this video, I'll go through some easy to forget setup and play rules for the scenario. Talk about some interactions of the rules as they relate to Rocket, and a couple other card interactions such as our lie in wait and how that interacts with quickstrike and the Groot ally. And like last time, I will also provide some tips here and there. So let's get started. So let's go through some of the easy to forget setup and play rules from the scenario. The first one is the deck size. So normally your deck is between 40 and 50 cards. However, we have 2 units to spend in the market, so you could buy 2 1-cost units, or 1-cost cards, 1 2-cost card, or just 1 1-cost card if you only really like one of those. However, those do not count toward the deck limit. So if you buy any of those, you're going to be over 40, and you could even be over 50. The next thing I want to remind everybody is, at the start of the game, you're going to bring in this Badoon ship, and you're going to need a counter. You're also going to bring the Milano and put it in your play area. The Badoon ship is an environment, right? An environment is a type of card that just stays in play unless gets otherwise discarded. And there is actually one of those types of cards in the deck, which is the Rogue Vessel. So when it shows up, it will come into play and stay into play until you do this first player action to get rid of it. Another thing to just remind everybody, it is 2 threat per player. So in the solo, it's going to be 2 threat per turn, and it starts at 2 for the main scheme. I also found I was forgetting that after Drang schemes, you have to resolve the Badoon ship's charge up ability, right? So that's the idea that on this Badoon ship, at the start of every villain turn, you're going to put a counter on here. When it hits 4, you're going to do 2 indirect damage. Indirect damage, you can't overspend, right? So if you had an ally with 1 damage, you can't give it 2 indirect damage. You can only give it 1. And finally, of this batch of things for setup, or just kind of play of the main scenario, just this reminder, when Drang 2 comes into play, so when you defeat Drang 1, you're going to get the Spear. The Spear gives Drang Stalwart, so he can't be stunned or confused. You're probably going to spend close to half of your game fighting against Drang 2, which means cards like Sonic Rifle and Mockingbird that give Confuse and Stun may not be as useful as you think. You might only get limited use out of them. Now let's talk about the interactions and some rules related to Rocket. Specifically, I want to talk about salvage and timing related to salvage. And then I want to talk a little bit about weapons, how they interact with Rocket's abilities, and the charges that actually go on weapons. So let's look at salvage. Salvage is this double resource card that after you spend the card, you get to put a tech upgrade from your discard on top of your deck. And then the question is, how does this actually interact with cards that allow you to draw? When does that card end up? Does it end up on the top of your deck before you draw or after you draw? So the way this actually works is that when you pay for a card, the payment goes into the discard pile before the card takes effect. So the very first thing you do is actually put the cards that you're paying into the discard pile. So let's just say I am paying for Nick Fury, and I put some cards in the discard pile, and salvage is one of them. So after I spend this card, I've now spent it because I've paid for the card that I'm about to use. We're going to put a tech upgrade from our discard pile on top of our deck. So now, if battery pack was in the discard pile, I could grab battery pack and throw it on top of my deck. And then finally, I actually bring Nick Fury out. I draw my 3 cards, battery pack is on top, and then there's another couple cards. And so that's the order that you do. The card that you recover from salvage actually gets drawn that turn. The other thing I wanted to talk about is the restricted keyword and some things to do with weapons. So the restricted keyword says you can't have more than 2 cards of the same, or sorry, 2 cards with the restricted keyword in play at a time. If you ever play above that, so just like allies, if you go above your limit, you then have to discard a card to get back down to the limit. So you can actually play that 3rd restricted card, you just have to discard immediately to get back down to 2. Weapons will have 2 different ways that they use charge counters. There's going to be ones that use the uses keyword, and it tells you how many charge counters, and there's going to be ones that just tell you they enter play with a certain number of charge counters on it. And the idea here is that if it says uses, this means when they actually run out, so when you get from 2 down to 1, down to 0, as soon as it hits 0, the card goes, is discarded. On the flip side, cards that do not say uses, they go down to 0 and they just hang around. And this is really important from the perspective of thinking about Rocket's alter ego ability, which is you get to choose and discard a tech upgrade. So you can totally empty the charges on Rocket's pistol and then discard it to his AE ability later, but on the sonic rifle, if you completely emptied it, it would just get discarded. So those 2 interactions are different. And then the other thing I wanted to draw everybody's attention to is that the Rocket's weapons are actually attacks, so you can trigger Rocket's hero ability, which is to draw a card if you deal excess damage, through using the weapons. Just to be clear, it's not just the basic attacks, it can be through that. All right, the last thing I wanted to discuss is some things that may come up depending on the cards you actually specifically put in your deck. The first is going back to quickstrike and just some reminders of how quickstrike works. A quickstrike minion, when it comes out when you're on your hero turn, will attack you instantly. If you are on your hero side, if you're on your alter ego side, it won't attack at that point, right? So won't attack if it's alter ego, will attack if you're in hero. The order is that a quick strike minion comes out and it engages you. I mean, any minion engages you at that point, but a quick strike minion comes out, engages you. At that point, you can trigger any effects that say after a minion engages you, such as lie in wait. And so lie in wait would allow you to do the 3 damage to the pirate lackey, for example, before it actually attacked you. So after it engaged you, but before it attacked you, allowing you to defeat it and send it to the discard pile. Pirate commander, on the other hand, would not have this happen. It would take its 3 damage, but then still actually attack you. There's only one of these pirate commanders with the big 6 damage. There's a bunch of these 2 of these Badoon engineers, and then a handful of these pirate lackeys in terms of minions. The other thing I wanted to discuss is the Groot ally. The Groot ally is awesome, awesome, awesome. The way the Groot ally works is after Groot defends an attack, you heal 2 damage from him. The timing of this might not be unclear based on the new defense rules, but the idea is that the response effect that you see after Groot defends is not after you've assigned him to defend, but it's actually after he goes and defends and then takes his damage, taps and then takes his damage. If he's still actually in play, he could then heal. So in the example of the pirate commander, if Groot defended, he would take 6 damage, get defeated, and not get to heal. In the example of the pirate lackey, he would get to defend, he would take 3 damage, and then he could heal back, so he only had 1 damage. All right, thanks everybody for watching. Hopefully that helps you get some of your rules played as correctly as possible for this round.